Hey guys, what's up? Let's talk about Opetaia versus Glanton and Holloway versus Oliveira. Both these fights going down tonight. I haven't had time to talk about them yet, so I figure I got to get this video out before these fights actually take place tonight. And there's been lots of drama about the whole Zuffa belt, IBF belt, who's going to sanction this fight between Opetaia and Glanton. And it turns out it's just going to be a Zuffa title fight. IBF isn't going to sanction it, and it proves what I've said in my last video about Zuffa, that Zuffa boxing is just going to turn into another sanctioning body, bro. And like we've seen this happen before. I mean, sorry, not another sanctioning body, because that's what the IBF said. The IBF said, like, you know, this isn't a sanctioning body, so we're not going to sanction the fight. We see this as an unsanctioned fight because it's also a Zuffa fight. So they basically said, because this is a Zuffa fight, we're not going to sanction it, which that really can't be surprising considering the power games that have to be going on right now between Zuffa and these traditional sanctioning bodies for control of the sport right now. And how much that's obviously really just going to overshadow this fight, which I'll get to the fight in a minute, although it's not a particularly hard fight to pick. And what I really think is going to happen here with Zuffa boxing is that it's, like I said, it's going to end up becoming a belt assigned to big fights, or rather a belt where big fights are built around it, right? It's going to become a prize. It's going to become a lot bigger than the WBC, the WBA, the IBO. I think the best way to say it, especially for boxing fans and people who remember the history of the sport, is they're probably going to kind of be like the new HBO or the new Don King, where I think we've been in this era of super fights for a while, and I think we're starting to enter an era here with Zuffa and their role in the sport where we're going to enter that old school thing again. And they're trying to prevent that from happening, and they don't know the business. They don't know how this goes. If Zuffa boxing wants to put a big fight on, say they want to put on Usyk versus the Talma, yeah, sure, they have more money than God. They have all the money from the Saudis, right, to put that fight on if they want to. But if there are substantial other offers from any promoter associated with any of the other four sanctioning bodies, you've got a big wrench in the works towards making any big fight. And if any fighter doesn't want to fight somebody else, he's a little nervous, we call that dodging, we call that ducking, whatever we call it in boxing. If a fighter wants to do that, they just have to hide behind those traditional old school sanctioning bodies and give some, you know, big anti-Zuffa thing, right? And pretend that they're all against Zuffa and they don't like Zuffa boxing. You'll probably see that within the next couple of years. A fighter using the traditional sanctioned bodies to dodge a formidable champion who's already signed with Zuffa, like Opetaia, for example. But that's always where I've seen this going, right? Either Zuffa's going to turn into a sixth belt in every weight class, which they already are now, or at least in the weight classes that they have represented. I mean, I like that Zuffa has fewer weight classes. That's a good thing to me. But they've just added another belt to a bunch of these weight classes. I don't care. That's how I'm going to see it. Even if the Zuffa weight classes technically are different weight classes, that's because Zuffa is technically just a different entity in boxing, right? And like I've said before, you know, championship boxing is in a lot of ways a different sport from non-championship boxing. And in a different way, heavyweight boxing is a different sport from all the other weight classes of boxing. What you're about to see, Zuffa boxing, is kind of going to be a different sport. At least it's going to be structured differently. And you're going to have fighters, you know, coming in and out of the sort of Zuffa landscape. And again, in the same way that we saw, in a similar way that we saw with HBO and Showtime, right? Where it's not just the sanctioning bodies. Now you have another body that, bad enough, confusingly enough, also gives out another belt, right? So thank God we have these fights on free TV. You know what I mean? Thank God the fights are free, because that's swinging back some of the confusion, and I'm sure some of the BS that's going to come up, because the fact of the matter is the same industry trends, the same problems keep poking their head up in boxing era after era, time after time. And I think inadvertently here you've just opened up a door to a new form of the same old chaos. But another thing that isn't terribly new in boxing is extremely talented champions fighting walkovers. And yeah, that's what this fight is, Opetaia versus Glanton. Glanton's not a walkover. I mean, he's a walkover for Opetaia, right? He's not a walkover for everybody. He's a tough professional. When I think of Brandon Glanton, I think of a real professional. I think of a tough fighter. I think of somebody who, you know, back in the day in the 60s, 70s, at his size would be a big, tough, you know, heavyweight, like a figure in the heavyweight division, a guy who would just stand in there, trade punches. He's got good hands. He's tough to get out of there. But I mean, Opetaia is special. He's got such power. Opetaia is really, he should be a heavyweight. I've said that for a while. If you believe in Alexander Usyk at heavyweight, I know that he's a different fighter, but you have to believe in Opetaia's ability to go up to heavyweight. It's never been particularly subtle to me, actually, given what I said, heavyweight boxing is like a different sport. It's never been particularly subtle to me which cruiserweight fighters could go up to heavyweight if they wanted to. To me, it's always kind of easy to tell. Do you have the ability to take punishment like a James Toney, like an Evander Holyfield? Do you have the hands like an Evander Holyfield or like an Alexander Usyk? All right, then you're probably good, right? Do you have the hands? Do you have the power? Do you have the toughness? Because we've seen before, I mean, look at how many of the greatest heavyweights of all time are under 6 feet. I mean, not many, but Rocky Marciano, Mike Tyson. It proves you don't have to be a big dude to be a heavyweight. Well, Opetaia is not a small dude. Opetaia isn't 5'10". He's 6'3", 6'4". He's not Mike Tyson. He's an especially physically gifted cruiserweight, but there's nothing stopping him from being a heavyweight. His hands are definitely not stopping him from being a heavyweight. He'd have some of the best hands in the heavyweight division, and his power is going to translate at heavyweight. I don't think he has to worry about that. I think probably in the back of his head he's been worried about that for a while, although he'd never admitted he's a professional boxer. He'd probably never admit that he's worried about how his power is going to translate at heavyweight, but he probably is. But you know what, I say that, maybe he's not. He almost killed a guy in his last fight. I mean, really, he almost killed a guy. The guy was like unconscious for minutes after that shot. Opetaia has huge power. And, you know, he's patient. He's a great finisher. He doesn't really get rattled. He doesn't get shaken. You know, we've seen chinks in the armor before. Like, you see chinks in the armor with any fighter who leads with their offensive skill set as much as Opetaia does. He's not afraid to march forward. He's not afraid to move forward. He's not afraid to entertain. And I think this is a good opportunity for him. I think Brandon Glanton, he doesn't move that much, to tell you the truth. He doesn't move that much. I think in order to have success against Opetaia, you're going to have to move, and you're going to have to cycle around him, box him, give him angles, ask him some tough questions. The only tough question Brandon Glanton asks you is, you know, how many punches can I take? How many punches can you hit me with? That's what Brandon Glanton asks. I mean, he's a tough guy. But Opetaia, could it be a matter of breaking him down? Sure, but Opetaia has crazy power at cruiserweight. Crazy power. Yeah, the power might get dulled a little bit at heavyweight, but like I said, at cruiserweight, he's a showstopper. So to me, this isn't a particularly close fight. It's not a particularly good fight. And it's not really a fight I'm looking forward to that much, because it kind of makes me worried about Brandon Glanton. Where, like, he's a fighter who could definitely be doing other things, be taking other shows, and I'm sure he'd like the Zuffa paycheck. But this is definitely not a fight that Brandon Glanton has any chance of winning in my mind. And it's kind of like hypocritical to me. You know, the UFC built its whole brand on the whole idea of boxing is full of all these one-sided setup fights where you already know who's going to win. And the UFC, you know, you never know, anything can happen. And that's true. It's just like, look at all the resources put into this Zuffa boxing show, all the drama around it, the huge anticipated future for Zuffa boxing. And I mean, it's their first title fight. It's Zuffa boxing's first title fight. And it's this. It's the exact thing that the UFC, I thought back when I was a kid, existed to counteract, right? These one-sided fights where it's a obvious power punching champion against a guy whose game is standing in there and seeing how many times he can get hit, right? So I'm disappointed in this fight, to be honest with you. And I'm sure in the future we're going to get better fights out of Zuffa boxing. But like, if Conor Benn versus Regis Prograis is the only other thing we have to lean on, man, I don't know. I really don't know. At this point, I'm starting to think it'd be good for Zuffa, actually, if Makhmudov could upset Fury. Like, just give people something to talk about. Some, like, you know, get back to that a little bit, those upsets. You need something to throw a spanner in the works. Isn't that, again, that's what the UFC was built off of. Solid, good matchmaking. You need a fight or a result to show that, you know, Zuffa isn't just an extension of the boxing industry. Because that's what I feel like when I see something like Makhmudov versus Fury. Like, it is a good fight. It's almost the kind of fight that Zuffa said they were going to give us. Canelo Crawford was technically a Zuffa boxing match, I think. I think that was technically Zuffa boxing. Although obviously not Zuffa boxing as we know it, like now, just like not even a year later. It's already a completely different entity and being set up to turn into like a league. But the truth is still, it is too early for any definitive conclusions on Zuffa boxing, their role in the sport, or the effect they're going to have going forward. It's just too early to say, but I definitely have a lot of fears. And this is not going to be the best event of the year. I don't even think that big Fury versus Makhmudov card is going to be the event of the year, or is really going to hold a candle to any of these massive Ring or Riyadh season cards that we've seen put on, that I really hope aren't a thing of the past, because those are great compared to whatever Zuffa boxing is doing so far. And just to end the video, we'll talk about Holloway versus Oliveira. And, you know, it's another similar thing. I don't like this fight as much as Topuria versus Oliveira, and it makes me like Topuria versus Oliveira less, Because again, I've said this, you know, boxing, I said boxing is turning into the UFC and UFC is turning into boxing. I don't necessarily think boxing is turning into the UFC, but I think the UFC is starting to turn into boxing a little bit. And, you know, I'm not trying to be too mean. Oh, Charles Oliveira is going out there to lose, because people love Charles Oliveira. And Charles Oliveira is he's a great striker, and I understand why people root for him. But where are these people who actually think he's going to win these fights? That's my question. Where are these people who actually really think that Charles Oliveira was going to beat Opetaia? Where are the people who actually think that Charles Oliveira is going to beat Max Holloway? I don't believe you. I don't believe you that they actually exist. But the truth is, man, it's always a good day when there's a Max Holloway fight. I love watching Max Holloway fight. I don't miss Max Holloway's fights for the world. And it's going to be a great striking matchup. I think that Oliveira, it's a 5-round fight. Oliveira, he's going to have to use his takedowns a little bit. And he's going to have to try to stay to the outside. But the problem is, Holloway is such a dog. Holloway is such a volume fighter. He's going to get inside no matter what. And he's going to dominate the inside fight. You know he is. It's not that Oliveira is a bad inside fighter. He's got those teeps. He's got knees to the body. He can keep people away from him. But, like, Holloway has a lot of movement. He's Matrix-like. He's fast. He's got slips. He's got angles that he can use to just dominate the inside fight against Oliveira. That sort of distance management strategy that I think would really benefit Oliveira and allow him to win this fight isn't something that Max Holloway allows you to do. So the only way that I think Charles Oliveira could win this fight is if you really do see a worse, more washed up version of Max Holloway tonight. And I don't really anticipate that happening. So it's two pretty easy fights for me to pick tonight. Hopefully I'll be live for the fights on this fight channel. I'm definitely going to be live for the World Baseball Classic over on the main channel this evening. I had a lot of fun scoring some of those games yesterday. And I'll try to be live scoring this Opetaia Glanton fight, because I've had a lot of fun live scoring these boxing matches as well. So like, subscribe for all that stuff. Like, subscribe for more boxing content. Let me know who you guys think is going to win, Opetaia versus Glanton and Holloway versus Oliveira. To me, it's really obviously Opetaia and Holloway. But again, if you guys think that Charles Oliveira is going to win this fight, let me know why. I'm curious, because, like I said, I don't really see what in his game would put him above a guy like Opetaia or put him above a guy like Holloway. And it makes me worry that he's just being set up to lose. And so, be brutally honest with you, when I don't like it, you know, putting the old veteran out to pasture, as it were, like, you know, an old boxer who's gone on for too long. It just doesn't seem right to me, and it doesn't really seem like something that the UFC usually does. You know, like, he's Charles Oliveira, not Clay Guida. All right, guys. Anyway, peace out. See you next one.